Hey everybody, this is Josh here, the Gray Bearded Green Beret. I'm out in the eastern woodlands of upstate New York, and I am on the search for Chaga. And Chaga, Inonotus obliquus, is also known as true Tinder fungus, and it is a highly valued mushroom that is said to have some extremely valuable medicinal benefits, of which I will not get into here, mainly because my wife and I are both biologists, and facts have to be derived from the scientific method. And, you know, for me to say that it has those medicinal benefits publicly would be a challenge because I can't back it up. And we're talking about something that's long-term medicinal effects. So it's just not something that I really want to get into in a public forum, but would like to have that discussion in the comments below. If you have any empirical evidence or scientific data of the effectiveness of chaga mushroom medicinally, I'd love to see it linked in the comments section, or email it to me so that I can review it at joshua@flintsteelcsg.com, and I'd love to check it out. But up until this point, I've not been able to find much scientific evidence. Anyway, the short-term value of it is, and I will say this, I do drink chaga tea, and I'll show you in the future videos how I use it and what else I use it for. In the short term, for a survival type situation and for bushcraft, it has extremely valuable benefits as a tinder resource. It is true Tinder fungus. Typically, rumor also has it on the interwebs that it's only going to be found on birch trees like this one here. This is a white paper birch, and this is in fact a large ball of chaga right here. I'm going to bring around to this side. This is one that I visit once in a while, and you can see that I've harvested off a small piece of it in the past, but I never harvest all of it. So again, that's another argument that I'll have with folks online is, harvesting this resource to use for fire starting when it's such a valuable medicinal resource, and there's other fire starting things out in the wild that you could use, is a waste of a medicinal resource. I can see that point, but I've also had those same people that argue with me about that harvest the entire thing and sell it online. So me, I harvest a small little piece of it. That small chunk right there will probably last me the rest of the year, and that's all that I'll use. So I would argue that people that are using it for survival purposes may be harvesting it a little more sustainably than the people that are harvesting it to sell it for its perceived medical benefits. So enough said with that. But white paper birch, this particular case, it is white paper birch, and this one has been here for several years. With the birch, this is one of the most valuable fire resources in the Northeastern Woodlands because the paper birch, the bark that comes off of this, and I've got some more on the ground I can show you real quick, but the bark that comes off of this is very high in betulac acid. The betula species, the birch species, has a nice flammable oil in it that tends to stay in the bark, and I think that also seeps into the chaga mushroom as well, which gives it some of its fire qualities. But chaga mushroom is a parasite. It's a parasitic, so you'll find it on live trees. When this tree dies and falls on the ground like these, then the chaga will die off because the host died, and you'll end up getting horse hoof fungus. Fomus fomentarius, horse hoof fungus, is what we'll typically get up here, and that is also a tinder fungus, but you have to process it and use it a different way. So false tinder fungus, horse hoof fungus, Fomus fomentarius, will be found on dead ones because it's a decomposer and not a parasitic like this one. So live birch and other species, which I'll show you here in a second, it does not only grow on birch as is rumored across the interwebs. It's a parasitic, so live trees you'll find the chaga a lot of times. Dead trees on the ground you'll find the horse hoof fungus more often than not. So it just depends what resource you have. They are both good tinder fungi. Fungi? Both funguses That I know is wrong. Anyway, I'm going to show you what this looks like so you can tell the difference between this and a burl, which there's plenty of burls around, but this is unmistakable to me. It's got, and it's wet out right now, but I'm trying to get that in focus. It's got kind of that gnarly skin on it. It's more like a black growth that looks burnt. So let me grab my saw and I'll pull off a little slice of that and I'll bring you guys right back here. Set this down here. Long red braid is putting babies to sleep, so I'm back to self-filming for a minute. Stay. All right. Bust out my trusty Silky. I'm just going to take a little piece off of what I've already cut off. And this is very new, this is very wet. But I'll show you the inside there. There's no wood grain whatsoever, all right? And this is soaking wet right now, but normally it has a nice bright orange color that I may be able to get to if I scratch it down a little. That nice orange color to it right there, right? So that's a good slice of chaga. I'm going to put that in my haversack for later, and I'll dry those out and keep that in my fire kit, but I'm also going to make tea with it, and I'll show you that in a future video. Sorry, I'm talking to my junk there. All right, so let's take a look here. That's where I cut that off right there. So again, white paper birch, commonly found on that, and it is also rumored to be the only chaga that has medicinal benefits. But again, I don't have any evidence of the medicinal benefits to begin with, let alone have evidence that it only has medicinal benefits if it's found on a birch. It's one of those things, it's one of those arguments that change whenever you disprove a theory that it's only found on birch. I'm going to show you in a second, right down the wood line here, probably another 200 yards away. It's growing on another species that it's not supposed to grow on. But you know, that argument changed from it can't be found on anything but birch to when I show that it's found on more than just birch, it's, well, it only has medicinal benefits if it's on the birch. You know, keeping in mind again, neither of which has any evidence that I can see. Will it hurt you to drink chaga tea? Absolutely not. I drink it all the time. Could it possibly have long-term health benefits? Absolutely, it could. And that's why I drink it all the time, because it doesn't hurt. And it's actually a pretty decent tea. I like it, but can I prove that it does anything? No, I can't. But there's a lot of things like that. And really what it comes down to is everything on the planet, you know, you can boil it down to the periodic table of elements. Like that's what everything is. So to think that a medicinal plant, or a medicinal fungus in this case, cannot contain the same compounds, the same chemical compounds, the same elements as a man-made pharmaceutical, to me is absolute nonsense. And not to go too far down the political side of things, I guess it's not really political, but it's leaning that way. Pharmaceutical companies produce something made of elements, you know, they're tablets. Nature does the same thing. Everything boils down to that periodic table. So is it possible? Absolutely yes, and I'm not saying that it's not. But is it only found on birch? So this particular gnarly old dude here is actually a hop hornbeam. You can tell that that is not a white paper birch or birch of any kind. I'm going to bring you out a little bit and kind of show you some other distinguishing features of it if I can get them to show up. Let's see. You can kind of see it maybe. You've got the leaves right there with the hop-shaped flowers that look like hops. That distinguishes it as the hop hornbeam. See if I can find a better example of that in here. Here's one right here. There's one of the branches. And you can see the little hop-like flowers on it. The dead giveaway hop hornbeam. Anyway, let's take a look at it and see what we've got on here. Actually move you around. What is that little guy? right here. So here we've got some chaga mushroom growing on the hop hornbeam. So still has that nice black crusty look to it. Sorry, my camera work is terrible here. Try to get you up here. So it still has that nice black crusty look to it. And then on this other side, I've already confirmed that it is chaga by cutting a piece off. I'll show you that again here real quick so that people don't think that's a burl right there. I've seen it before. It is not a burl. That is chaga. Let me see here. Let me borrow this hop hornbeam limb here. It really wants to fall. Stay. Okay, now we're in business. Chaga on the hop hornbeam. This is a little more dry down here. No wood grain. That's chaga on a hop hornbeam, not a birch. Let me compare it to the other piece for you, just so you can convince yourself that's true. This piece is a lot more wet, but this is chaga off of the birch. This is chaga off of the hop hornbeam. Birch, extremely wet. Hop hornbeam, not quite so wet. So, point is, they're both good for what I use them for. I'm going to put those in a haversack and move on. This area does happen to be loaded with some gooseberries that are not quite ready yet. Once those turn a dark purple, they're going to be delicious. And there's some gooseberries there. And then right over here, somewhere I saw, I've got some raspberries coming in. The birds have got to some of them aren't ready. And I saw one, I thought. There you are. There's a nice ripe raspberry right there. I'm gonna go ahead and eat that. Yeah, that's a good one. And we're talking about the birch as a valuable fire resource in the Northeast, and that's true. This bark that it's given up here is full of oils that burn well even when wet. It's been raining all day today. The sun's finally come out so that I could film this, but without any further processing, hit that. A little bit of wind here. A lot of wind. Come around this way maybe. See if you can see it. There we go. The wind's cooperating. So once the water evaporates off of it, it'll light rather quickly. Contrary to some other things that I've seen on the interwebs that it won't work when it's wet. It does, but that'll burn for a long time. So it can get even the most stubborn of kindling going if you have enough of this. So this is an outstanding resource. Not to mention that as a parasitic, chaga, true Tinder fungus, will grow on this in a lot of places. And when it dies, you'll get what's called Horse Hoof Fungus, Fomentarius, which is false Tinder fungus, but it also works as a tinder fungus is just processed and used a different way. So I'll show you that on a dead birch right over here. So on this dead birch, we've got some really good examples of Fumus fomentarius, also known as horse hoof fungus. Give you a little underside shot of that. We've got some really good ones right here. And it kind of looks, you know, appropriately named. It kind of looks like a horse hoof fungus. And for this horse hoof fungus, directly underneath here is the trauma layer. Underneath this woody core is a trauma layer, and that is also known as amadou, which is an outstanding tinder resource as well. So a couple great resources in the Northeastern Woodlands, and yeah, I'll show you how I use those in a future video. As always, appreciate your likes, appreciate your views, your comments, your shares, questions, put them down below, we'll get to them. And till next time, hope to see you in the woods.